Hi class, thank you so much for tuning in today and for your patience despite our technical difficulties. We do have a really great panel. This is our Young Professionals panel, and we are starting to read your questions on the Twitter feed, and they are very good questions so far, so we're very excited to get to them. But first, let's introduce the panel that we have here today. If y'all will just say your name, where you work, and kind of what your role is at your organization. Katie, you want to start?
Yeah, my name is Katie Martinez. I work at Children at Risk. I've been there for about a year and a half, and my role is the Associate Director of Development, and I kind of concentrate a little bit on individual giving and then corporate giving, and then also a little bit of event help out when it's needed.
My name is Hayley, Jaska. I work at Child Advocates. I've been there for about 4 years now, and I'm their special events manager currently.
Great.
My name is Esmeralda Ancelmo. I work for Gulf Coast Regional Blood Center. I've been there for about 3 years, and I'm the manager of donor recruitment.
And Esmeralda, you have kind of a unique position, and this is something I'm very excited for the students to kind of start thinking about, is that a lot of times we think of fundraising or resourcing, we think of money,
Right.
but your currency is blood.
Right.
Can you talk a little bit about how you recruit people or organizations to organize blood drives?
Yeah, so it's a little different because we're not solely asking people for money, and so for us it's a little more challenging. Sometimes I think people would rather give money than say, hey, I'm going to donate blood, because they have certain fears of needles or looking at blood and things like that. So some of the way that we get people to buy into our mission is to learn a little bit about them and show them how, even by not just giving money, but by donating blood or hosting a blood drive, they are actually contributing to our community more, just because it's something that's free, it's in their body, and it's something that's very needed. Like, we need 1,000 units every single day just to collect enough blood for the entire area of Greater Houston. We try to connect with the mission that a company has so that they buy into our mission and understand why it's so important, and kind of just educate them on the need of blood, especially in our community, not just the entire United States.
And I'm glad you bring up mission. I think it would be really helpful to the students of the class if y'all would explain kind of how you use your mission to recruit new donors or plan events, or just the work that you do. You want to start, Katie?
Sure. So our mission is a little bit different as a nonprofit. We serve as a catalyst for change through research and public policy to impact the lives of children throughout Texas. So we're kind of a higher level organization. We don't do direct services, so it is sometimes hard to relate and tell that story to donors to get them to buy in. However, we work with so many different groups who actually do that work in the community and impact people. So we remind them of that as how we are a collaborator with those groups. So that's very important. We also pass legislation, which is very, very impactful. It actually impacts laws that actually impacts a lot more children. So it is a little bit different, and it's kind of harder to get those stories that are tangible. But we do think that a lot of people are interested because it's kind of a unique mission.
Great. Hayley?
Yeah, so our mission at Child Advocates is we recruit and train the court-appointed volunteers who are put onto cases for children who have just entered the system because of severe neglect or abuse in their home. And our volunteers are, like I said, court-appointed, and they work hand-in-hand with Child Protective Services and the judges to make sure that these children end up in their forever homes where they know that they are protected, where they are safe. And so that is our driving force in anything that we do, whether it's planning our events, getting in more individual donors, or government grants, foundation grants. And so the mission really resonates with a lot of people because they are very unfamiliar with that number happening in Harris County. Every given day in Harris County, there's over 4,000 children in the system who are in need of a court-appointed advocate. And so when people hear that number, and then the number that we are actually able to help with our current revenue funds, it automatically gets them hooked. So it's a strong mission, it's a good mission, and that's been our driving component in being able to get people in the door.
And I think the difference kind of between y'all, Hayley and Esmeralda, your missions, and ours at Children at Risk is y'all's are very focused.
Right.
Ours is pretty broad. We have 4 issue areas. We do a lot of policies.
Yeah.
So I imagine it could be a little helpful.
Yeah.
To be so focused.
Having a very focused mission, they know exactly what we do. They may not know all the ins and outs, but it's definitely helpful when they know exactly what their funds are going to.
That's great. And Esmeralda, maybe you can start off by talking a little bit about what got you into this resource development role. What led you to this position?
So it's actually a funny story. I don't think that a lot of people grow up being like saying, I want to be in the blood bank industry. So I was actually working in sales for a retail company, and with that company, I didn't have a lot of growth. Like where I was is probably where I was going to be for a long time. So I started looking. So my degree is actually in urban and regional sciences. So I started looking at descriptions of things that I would do with that degree and then typing that into Indeed. And one of the random things that popped up was site inspections. And so when we are doing a blood drive, we have to do a site inspection because it's basically event planning as well. And we're checking sites to make sure that where we're hosting the blood drive is going to be an adequate area and we're going to be able to see the amount of donors that we want to see. So that's what brought me to the blood center. But I've been donating blood since I was in high school and throughout college. So it was a mission that I was already aware of. So I applied and have loved it ever since.
That's great. Hayley, what about you?
I started getting into fundraising at Texas A&M. I was their fundraising chair for my sorority, and it kind of grew from there. I had been working at a daycare center, so I'd always been kid-centered around wherever I worked, whatever I volunteered for, and so I knew that's what I wanted to end up in. And so once I became the fundraising chair for my sorority, I kind of just grew from there. I came to Houston, started out part-time job in development, and then grew into a full-time position. And that, my degree probably did not help me. I'm a history major from A&M with an art and architecture history minor. So that really didn't have anything to play into it, but what I was involved in whenever I was at school helped lead me into the career path that I'm in now.
That's great.
Yeah.
And how about you, Katie? I don't think I even know that.
Yeah, so I started out volunteering in college. Well, I did it when I was younger, but mostly in college through a gender communications class. I was volunteering with an at-risk youth program, and I was working with a group of girls and really, working with them to educate them and get them to be passionate about their schoolwork. And I was like, wow, this is neat. This is different. This isn't a daycare. They're actually getting educated. And so that's when I started realizing about how important education was and how I wanted to get involved with at-risk youth. And so then I went and started working randomly at the blood center with Esmeralda. And I absolutely loved it there. And that was like sales, but also like development on its own too. It was a very unique experience. And then I went back to school to get my master's and knew that I wanted to go back and kind of work with at-risk youth and impacting those lives. And then that kind of led me to Children at Risk.
Well, great. And we're glad to have you. So can y'all tell me, as a young professional, even though you haven't been in the field for decades, surely you've had a professional moment that has really made you proud of yourself or where you were able to accomplish something in your first few years in this nonprofit industry. Will y'all talk about a moment like that? Whoever wants to start?
Any of you guys want to take it?
So now I'm the manager of donor recruitment. So I started off as a donor recruitment coordinator first, which is what we call our field recruiters that are outside cold calling our groups and setting up the blood drives. So the first year that I was with the blood center, right off the bat, I started off, and every single month we have quotas of what we have to meet as far as like how many units we have to collect in each of our territories. So we have 20 territories, and in my specific one, which was centered on actually like U of H main campus. The first year that I was there, I met all 12 of my goals for the first 12 months that I was there, and I think that's a great accomplishment. Like coming in right off the bat, established myself as like probably #1 recruiter.
That's great. That's great, and I think that's a really good example of how no matter where you're at in the hierarchy of an organization, you can really kind of show off your talents and be reliable and have great value.
Right.
Hayley?
Yeah, so I think mine, the one that comes to mind is background. I'm a very data-driven person. My history major helped with that. I went into the database administrator role when I first got to Child Advocates, and they wanted to reestablish their annual fund giving program. It had been direct mail, that style, for so long that our donors just kind of fell off from that. They no longer wanted to get a little postcard in the mail updating them. They wanted a true annual fund form letter, that kind of thing, and we needed that to get our individual donors back in the door. And so I worked hand in hand with our director to kind of reformat that, use the data that we had in our database already, and harness that to be able to segment our letters more, to make it more personalized for those individuals who are wanting to give. And within that first year of the reform, we exceeded our goal. It was an incredible boost to our individual giving, and we were able to take that and continue to grow the annual fund program, which was huge because it had been trailing off for some years.
Yeah. That's actually a great practice that I don't think many nonprofits think about. Campaigns think about it a lot.
Right.
And like who is your base? Who do you target? How do you target them? And nonprofits are very similar to campaigns. And so I think that's something that it does fall in that development fundraising category a lot, but there's often not funding to pay people like you to mine the data and figure out what to do.
Yeah,
Katie, what about you?
I would say, so when I first started, we were doing a brand new event. We were collaborating with another group. When I had been brought on, we didn't even have a chair or any chairs at the point, and our goal was to at least get 3 chairs per group. And so I kind of stepped in and helped out with that event, even though that wasn't my role. And we ended up almost doubling budget, which was really exciting. And I didn't know and realize how much my individual relationships with those donors would make an impact on that event, because when I was calling them and speaking to them about the event and getting them excited about it, that relationship really helped be successful with the sponsorships that came in.
That's a really great example, and leads us to another good question, is how a lot of people are afraid to make that ask for money, for blood, for time, for a lot of things. So how do y'all navigate that? Do you have any advice?
I think whenever I first got into this role, I asked my director the same thing. I was terrified of making that pitch, of making that cold call, that sales, and we turned it more into a storytelling moment. You were not selling your organization, you were really just sharing your organization and that mission and coming from that. You were not trying to get them right in the door right then and there. You wanted to introduce them to not only our organization, but the problem that we are facing in Harris County alone. And so once they understand that and understand what we do behind the scenes, got the ball rolling into the next conversations that we were having. And so we took it on. We don't refer to ourselves as a sales team or anything like that. That terrifies me to the core, being referred to as a salesperson.
For sure.
But it was really, you were just becoming so comfortable with the mission in the organization that you worked for that you were simply just sharing your story and sharing your passion.
Great. Esmeralda?
I think one of the main things is, I think as a human, you're just afraid of rejection. You think that if you go ask people for money, or you're asking people for blood donations, you're automatically thinking about them telling you no. So that's one of the main things that stops you from even asking. So I would suggest getting that mental block out of your mind, so that you are going to get rejected. Like that's just going to happen. But if you believe in the mission, you can. And I think one of the main things is awareness and then education. And I think you said a great thing talking about like planting little seeds, like letting people know about who you are, and they might not buy into it now, but they're going to buy into it later. So yes, right now it might be a no, but it's not always going to be a no. If a family member needed blood at some point, like they're going to think, oh yeah, I have that girl's card that said that we could always do a blood drive and things like that. So just planting those little seeds and sometimes being a little patient, which I know is a little hard.
For sure.
And I would piggyback on what Esmeralda said. working at the blood center with her, there were times when we'd have to go out to malls and it was the holidays and nobody was wanting to give blood. And we had a goal, like, let's ask 100 people and see how many we can get. And there were maybe 6 people that gave. That's a lot of rejection. It's a lot. However, when you're super passionate about that mission and what you're selling and what you really want out of it, like, we needed blood on that shelf and we knew how important it was. So that rejection didn't matter, right? Like, we knew at the end of the day, if we didn't get those 6 units of blood, that means 6 or 18 lives weren't being saved. So as long as you keep that mission in the back of your head, and same thing with us, you know, if we don't actually make the ask, they might not give to us, and then we're not impacting children throughout Texas. So you have to keep that in mind.
Yeah, I always tell people that the number one reason why no one gives is because no one ever asked them. So if we have our own objections of not even asking, then we're definitely not going to have enough.
Yeah.
That's great. Now, when we do this Young Professionals panel, just by nature of being a young professional, we're all millennials, and I think it's a great thing. And I think even in these panels, I mean, these are like the most enthusiastic guests that we have typically, and so I think that's a strength. What are some other strengths that you see in our generation? Our class right now, the students, I would say about half of them are younger, like out of undergrad, this is grad school, they're moving on. And some are like mid-year and late career or mid-career transitioning to a different career, to nonprofits. So they'll be working with a lot of millennials. So what kind of strengths do you say we bring to the table, or advice do you have for students?
I'd say we're extremely tech savvy. That's the age that we grew up in. We, I mean, working a printer and a computer is no big deal to us anymore, or anything like that, and especially working with a huge database as well. It definitely helps, because I know people were, unbeknownst to the level of data that we had in our database, people were just doing data entry, and there hadn't been too many people come along before and really bring out those details, run those reports, analyze those reports, and take it from there. And so the fact that us millennials are usually tech savvy, I think that helps. And we always, I know our team, our younger ones, we have the phrase, you know, obviously work hard, but work smarter. And I think it's not just the monotonous work 8 to 5. You come in, you get your things done, you have a good time with your team doing it, but you're not dragging it out into a 12-hour day just to say that you are working hard. You get what you're done in a smaller amount of time, and I think that millennials have been able to manage their time a little bit better, so that way we can get home at a decent hour, so that way we can meet up with our friends for happy hour. Like nobody wants to be in the office until 8 p.m. when your friends are out enjoying a bottle of wine together. So that's going to be your driving force. Like, let's work pretty smart here.
I think I hear the staff crew laughing at us.
Very true, very true.
I agree.
Yeah.
Esmeralda?
I would say that as millennials, we're very open to new ideas. I think that older generations, sometimes they've learned things a certain way, and that's the way that they've always done it, and so they're a little more resistant to new ideas and opening up and trying things that are new. So I think that for us, that's a big strength. We're very open, and if something isn't working, we're going to try to problem solve and find a new way of doing something so it is working. And I would piggyback on that. I think that another strength is that we're very big on work-life balance. We're not trying to work, we don't want to work a 12-hour day, and I think that just for our mental health, like, we want to be able to go to work, do a great job, and then go home and relax. So.
And I think what you said about the being able to kind of rethink and be open-minded really pairs well with having mentors and other people you work with who are older than you, and they have experience, they have skills that they can also help you think through something that you've never thought through before too, right?
Right.
What would you say, Katie?
I would say we're incredibly adaptable, especially with this political climate and things that come up. We are adaptable. We make things happen. We're going to get thrown curveballs, and I think that there are a lot of times when we are just going to make it happen no matter what. And I'd say, especially with the people that we work with, I see it all the time and how adaptable our team is, and they make it happen no matter what the situation is that faces them.
And that's really something you have to do in a nonprofit in general, is to be adaptable, because your funding streams are unstable or always threatened due to anything, really. I mean, Harvey, I can't tell you how many nonprofits like food bank, it like tripled their revenue, and other nonprofits really struggled. Yeah. So I think it's just something that everyone's got to work with. As we're all kind of young in our careers, is there a time where you failed or made a mistake? How did you handle it? What did you learn? Did it make you better? I know it's always hard to talk about.
No mistakes.
This is a safe
Right,
place.
yeah. It's like that interview question, what are your weaknesses? I work too hard. No, absolutely. Coming into this role, this was the biggest role I've played because, again, like leading up, I was development assistant, database administrator, development coordinator, and then special events. And so we are very special events driven at Child Advocates, and so a lot was put onto my plate in a very short amount of time. And so there were things that fell beneath the cracks that I was not made aware of. And so it was one of those things where you had to sit down with your mentor, with your director, with your boss, and just being like, this is what happened. How did this happen? What can I learn from this? How do I better this next year? And it's a sucky feeling, but you have to go, I absolutely own up to that I missed that wasn't done exactly the way that it needed to be done. And especially because in development, it's very donor focused, and there are very particular donors, whether they're board members or anything like that like to be contacted a certain way or recognized a certain way, and when you don't do it, they make sure that you know that that's not the way that they like it. And so it's just adapting to that and learning the community that you're serving, and you will make mistakes. Yeah. It's just what you do with it.
Sure.
I think mine falls back a little bit more on kind of also learning how to manage people. Like, I'm so used to managing accounts and managing all these different groups, and now I'm in a different role where I'm managing people. And one of my mistakes has been where I'm an extremely impatient person, which is considered a virtue in sales, but probably not when it comes to management. And kind of offering someone a project and saying, hey, I think you would be great for this. And with a nonprofit, sometimes they're overwhelmed and they're doing multiple things. And then me reading them wrong and thinking like, oh, they weren't interested in this project. I went and offered it to someone else because I thought they weren't interested. And I should have just waited until they came to me and said, no, like it's a yes or it's a no. I didn't give them the chance to come and communicate with me. And then so kind of jumping the gun, I have too far ahead. So learning to like, I can't control everything. I have to sometimes be patient and just let people come tell me like what's going on.
Great lesson, for sure.
And my one story is a little similar to Hayley's. I was put into a position where there was a lot on my plate at once. I was doing a lot, and there was a big mail mishap. And I think, and I went straight, and I had a new boss that had just started, and I had to go to him and own up my mistake. But he didn't shame me, and he didn't make me feel awful. It was just a learning curve, which makes you feel so much better. It makes you feel that, you have to learn from these mistakes as a young professional. Otherwise, if you're always on this like pedestal or acting like you're perfect, you won't learn from these mistakes. And as long as your boss or your supervisor or mentor they're not shaming you and you feel comfortable to talk, it always makes it a lot easier.
That's great. And some of our students, so they're in a nonprofit management degree program. They may not go into fundraising, or they might. What would y'all say are like the entry-level resource development salaries in Houston?
I actually asked our HR about this because when I got into it, I was like, I started out part-time, so. But she was doing some comparisons for me, and she says depending on the size, we fall into the $3 million to $10 million bracket of nonprofit. And so our entry-level development start from 32 to 36, depending on background experience. If you were possibly able to volunteer working with the database or being around a development team. And so she said that that's a pretty safe and competitive range as far as entry level.
Great. Would y'all say the same?
Yeah. Well, for us, I would definitely agree, and we're kind of in the same area. Even as far as like all staff is concerned, any type of entry level, I would say, is probably in that range. Yeah.
Same thing.
For us, it's a little higher, especially because it's still a nonprofit, but I think it's different. So with us, they focus so much on sales. So entry level will be between 45 and 55, depending on experience.
That's great. And I think one thing to note about the fundraising development department, whenever I was looking for jobs, there were always jobs in fundraising.
Right.
Yep. All the nonprofits had fundraising jobs. MD Anderson had like 10 openings at once just in fundraising.
Yes.
And I think it's one where if you get in the door and then you can move somewhere else, get to a hospital, you can easily make six figures after like 10 or 15 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
It's definitely an area for a lot of growth. And again, like you said, there are always places hiring for that type of work. And yes, there is a lot of movement and that you can move up pretty quickly, which is nice. Yeah.
And to that end, I think, are some of y'all hiring or have internship openings for these students if they're interested?
You can always contact us, obviously. I mean, Child Advocates, I mean, we have, again, Kid Central events left and right and Donor Central events, and we always need office help, volunteer help as far as events, and that's honestly probably the best way to get in the door. Development itself doesn't usually do a lot of interns, but I know our special projects does, and they work closely with us because we fundraise for the events, but we will not turn you down. If you want to help us out, we will gladly welcome you and find a place for you.
Great.
Children at Risk actually has a pretty rigorous internship program that's during the summer. So it's May to August. It's an unpaid internship, but we have a ton of openings for different areas, including development. So if you guys are interested. And then we are also hiring in our North Texas office for an assistant director of development too, if you are looking to move to the North Texas area.
And we are hiring. We are looking for one donor recruitment coordinator. So you guys can go to jobs.giveblood.org and look at the job description. And I mean, there's always opportunities to volunteer. We're also always looking for people to host blood drives. That's another way to give back. So there's multiple opportunities.
Great. Well, thank y'all. So let's go to some of the student questions. We have about 20 minutes left, so I think we can get through a lot. So one that I really loved was from Afshan Malik, who asked about your mentorship. Do y'all have mentors? Who are some of your mentors? What do you look for in a mentor?
So one piece of advice that I got actually from y'all's professor, Dr. Bob Sanborn, when I first started was almost to have like a mentor board for myself. So like 3 to 4 individuals out in the community who I will work with, who are older than me, who are doing something that I want to do, and use those people as a source. So I do actually have 2 mentors that I kind of reach out to on certain situations for professional development and just, self-care time too. They can relate, they know where you're at. And it was some of the best advice I ever got.
And who, you don't have to say names, but like what type of people did you look for?
So one is a woman who actually has her MSW, but she's in a different field now. And she's spunky and she's fun and she just can relate. So that's always nice, right? And then another one is a previous boss that I had. Yeah.
Great.
Mine's pretty similar to Katie's. I've been lucky enough to be under 2 incredible women directors. First at Incarnate Word Academy, which was my first position, and then again at Child Advocates. Our CEO at Child Advocates is one of my biggest mentors. She's been with the company itself for over 25 years in the 34 years of existence. So she started out at CPS and grew through the ranks. And she's one of the most approachable people that I've ever worked with. And same with my director at IWA. And so I've been lucky enough to use both of them as mentors and grow from them. And never burn bridges, guys. So always stay in contact with your old employments, because like Katie said, they can stay with you as you grow, and you can always reach back out to them.
Great advice.
And for me, I think same, like my current director, whenever I was a recruiter, he was my manager at the time, and now that I'm a manager, he's the director of the department. He's been with the company for about 13 years and has so much experience, and our career paths are actually very similar. So we have a lot of similar characteristics in how we got into the Blood Center and how we've grown in the Blood Center. So he's very open to feedback. He's also very honest, and he also tries to know you as a person. So even if I'm having a tough day or anything like that, he always knows. Like, he can sense it, and before I can say anything, he's like, "Hey, let's talk. Let's clear the air. Like, what's going on?" And I think as a mentor, like, that's great, because it's not just solely focused on just work. Like you said, sometimes you have to talk about life, and so it's good to always have someone that you can depend on.
That's great.
And real quick, like what you were saying about not burning bridges. So that one of my mentors is her director now. And actually he ran into Dr. Bob at the United Way leadership, and now they're partners and on a board together. Like, what a small world, right? Yeah. So again, don't ever burn bridges.
The nonprofit
Good
world
thing
is a
you-
very
you're-
small
Good
world.
thing that's my mentor. Yes.
No, that's all really great advice. Thanks, guys. Stacy McKenzie asks, what's your best advice for using social media marketing in fundraising, and what strategies work for you?
I think part of it is knowing your audience, like who are you reaching out to. I think different generations use different social medias, and knowing what is going to appeal for each social media. Like the things that you're going to post on Facebook, like the verbiage might be a little different than what you're posting on Snapchat. So I think knowing your audience and who you're reaching out to and kind of catering to that is very important when you are using social media.
Great.
And I think don't flood the feed. The more you post, I think the more you lose the interest of your viewers. So choose wisely, and I think especially stay on brand. Figure out the brand that you want to portray, like she said, on the different social medias, and stick with that. Because if it's going to be different language or a different look to each of your posts, they're not going to get used to it. I think it's going to confuse a little them, so just stay on target and don't flood the feed.
Yeah. And I'd also say don't ever be afraid to post, because if you're not posting at all, then they're not hearing from you. But I do agree, never flood the feed. And then never miss an opportunity to tell a story about your mission. If there is a story out there, you definitely want to make sure that your audience is hearing about it, and you want them to kind of tug at those heartstrings. It's also a great opportunity to engage new donors.
And to that point, I'll brag on Katie and the development team a little bit with one project that we just implemented about telling stories of our impact. So it's very hard to quantify our impact other than, okay, we passed legislation, it helped X number of children, but we're only able to do that once every 2 years. And so what are the stories in between using our research? And so they created a Google form that every time, like me as a program person who travels for like a third of my job and am always in communities, at any time I hear a story, someone was like, last time you were here, I used your data to do this. I'm like, oh great, I'm going to type it in this Google form. You're going to use it. You're going to tweet about it.
Yes.
And then that's just one way of being creative and how you collect those stories. Someone let's see, this was good. Tanya asked, as a young professional, are there any good networking groups you recommend, or ways to build relationships?
So one that I'm a part of is the Big Brothers Big Sisters Young Professional Group. I'm also a big, and you don't have to be a big to be part of that. And that is a fantastic way to meet people and to network with people, I'd say.
Yeah, and I'm a member of AFP, the Association of Fundraising Professionals, which is a great one here in the greater Houston area. And again, being a part of a young professionals networking group, I would say go outside, not just, go outside of your normal organization, because I think most of us now have YP groups. And so getting involved in a different organization will bring you into an entirely different community to network with. So going outside of your organization and maybe even the field of your organization too.
And I think that's really good advice also to avoid burnout, because you give as working for a nonprofit, you give so much.
Right.
And sometimes it can be even like kind of emotional, especially whatever subject matter you're dealing with. And so also giving your extra time to that can be less than rewarding. So just kind of diversifying a little bit. What would you add?
For me, I would say staying connected with like the young, the alumni for Texas A&M, especially because they have chapters in every city, like especially with the Houston one. So staying connected, because then you're not just focusing on the nonprofit, like you're being exposed to different people and different ideas and different jobs and things like that. So I think that's good. And even then, like not just being out in a group, I think LinkedIn is still a really great resource, and you can reach a lot of people that way still. And a lot of people are open to being, I guess, reached out to on LinkedIn. Like a lot of people will answer your messages even if they don't know you, and especially if you have a connection where, hey, I went to A&M too, like I have some questions, things like that, people will respond.
And something I say often is, as students, everyone will take your calls. Everyone will let you stop by their office and pick their brain for 30 minutes. No one's going to turn you away. And so it's really great to like leverage that while you can, because soon enough you won't be students, and you'll just be any regular other person.
And they can say no.
And they'll be like, no, I don't really have time for you. Yeah. So another great question is, how often should nonprofits hold special events? And I would add to that, like what kind of parameters around special events do you have? Because I know there's something about the ratio of income versus expense, best practices.
So like I said, we at Child Advocates, we are very event driven. We have a revenue of $6.2 million for the 2018 operating year, and close to $2 million of that will come from special events. And so we hold our major events probably about 6 times a year, and that's very frequent as far. But we're starting to really evaluate our ROIs, our return of investments on it, and figuring out the time best spent and really what to do and how to go from there, because we really strive to diversify where our revenue is coming from. We don't want to be so events driven, because last year one of our events fell around Harvey, and obviously it took a huge hit. And so it depends on the different events. I say also to touch different areas of your organization or of your community, because our 5K and 1K is obviously going to bring in different people than our gala. And our another one of our February events, our campaign just reaches an entirely different community, not just in our organization, but in Houston. And so being able to diversify and reach out to the different people and allow them different events was huge to us. But again, you just don't want to have too many events, because it is it is expensive. You always want to stay under the 20% mark. That is basically the Charity Navigator and the GuideStar 4-star requirement. So you always want to compare your budget and your income too. And so keeping intense track of that will also help further your events, because you don't want to be spending $300,000 on an event that you get $600,000 from.
So your expenses for a single event should stay under 20% of your total revenue.
So of your budgeted goal. So think about what your budgeted goal is going to be, and then figure out what your expenses from there. And I always keep it at 16%, because those things always come up. And so you want to be able to go a little bit above what you're already budgeting, but it's a harsh 20%. Whenever you're auditing and all that, whenever they're reviewing, you want to stay beneath that percentage.
So like $20,000 when you raise $100,000.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. What would you say, Esmeralda?
For us, it's a little different, because we're not focusing on monetary donations. We're focusing on blood donations, and we need it every single day. Like I said, we need 1,000 units every single day. Surgeries are being scheduled around this. So for us, every single day, we have to host we host at least 20 blood drives.
Wow.
Because we're also not just, we don't have we have a headquarters, but we have 20 territories that we're focusing on around the greater Houston area. We also go all the way up to Brazos Valley, College Station, and Nacogdoches. So with the 20 territories, every single day, everyone is hosting blood drives, and then and maybe I have a blood drive today, but maybe tomorrow I don't, but another recruiter does, because it's also based off of resources. We have a set number of staff members that we can schedule every single day, and also weekly. We have limits as to what we can use. Like currently we can use, I think, depending on the day, up to 90 staff a day or 110 staff, and then weekly, like 625 staff. So those are our constraints. So if whenever they're trying to schedule a blood drive, if the resources are already being used, then you have to pick a different day for your event to go on.
Wow. I think there's actually a blood drive going on here on campus.
Yeah, today. I was almost going to be like, did it do good? How many
Checking on
units do
it.
we collect?
Yeah, that's funny.
Staying on top of
What do you think, Katie?
So with us, it goes back to kind of what Hayley says, to really just make sure that you're concentrating on different markets. We currently have 4 major events. However, one is in the Dallas area because we do have an office in North Texas. We have 2 offices in North Texas. So we do have an event there. But then our other events are focused on very different groups, and I think that's really important. And then going to what you said about expenses, that really helps with your donors if they're able to write off a larger amount because the expense of the event is a lot lower. That always encourages them to donate and to keep giving.
Great. Yeah. So Rocio Moreno asks, are you happy with your nonprofit job, or do you think that you'll change careers? And Katie, I won't tell anyone.
I hope Dr. Bob doesn't see this. Currently, I'm super happy. However, like I said, I am getting my master's in social work, so I do see myself more in the program side eventually. But I do currently really love what I do, and I get to talk about the programs with people who really care about it, and then that raises money for the organization, and then everyone's happy, so it's not a bad place to be.
Well, when you're ready, come on over to the program side. But I need more funding first.
No, I'm extremely happy. I came into this role January of 2017, and I've just been able to learn so much more about the organization, so much more about the community that supports us, and I love every part about it. And the main part about it is we are a small shop. We're 6 individuals, and so you are not doing one thing all the time. You are wearing those multiple hats, and I think, and it depends on the person, because I know I would never want to go to a big shop of 20 or 40, 50 people just because you might be doing the same task year in, year out, or day in and day out. And so it depends, basically finding your fit, what works best. And I will be at Child Advocates for a while, for sure.
Good.
For me as well, like, I love what I do, and I think one of the main things is that you can see how it affects people, and I think for all of us, like, we can see like the hard work that we put into our jobs and how it helps other people, and why this is so, like, yes, we're gonna have days that are gonna be very stressful, and we're working for nonprofit, that's always gonna be a thing, but at the end of the day, our efforts are literally changing lives, and especially if you've been personally affected by some of the things that your mission stands for, then you're going to be more passionate about it. So it's going to help on those hard days where you think, oh, maybe this is a hard day, then like shake it off. The next day will be a new day, and you just keep working towards your mission. And I think you always have to find happiness in your current role. Because I think sometimes it's also mental. Like, you have to love what you do, and if you don't, you have to find something that you love about it. And if you don't, then you can always change. Like, you can always move. You're not a tree.
Yeah, you're not a tree.
You're not a tree.
Exactly. I mean, especially in the nonprofit world, I think the average rate or the turnover rate is 2 to 3 years. I personally think it should be a little bit longer because you're growing these relationships, and it only makes your role in position better, but it happens. I mean, people move to a mission that is more in line with what they are wanting to do. And obviously we're nonprofits because we are mission-driven individuals. We are not in the corporate world, you know, or working for the man or anything like that. Like, we are at our jobs because we are tied closely to the mission.
Great advice. What would you say to students? So after they get their degree, they're going to be looking for jobs. When you were applying for jobs, or when you see applicants apply for jobs with you now, what would you say are, what advice would you give students? Is it around like having a great cover letter, or going to this certain website, or using a certain resource, anything?
Do your research. Yeah, the first thing that I did whenever I got the interview with Child Advocates was I scrolled through all parts of their organization, and since I knew I was going into development, interviewing for that position, just going through their annual reports, where they got their funding from, what kind of events that they held, and all of that. And so the more that you're familiar, it's going to be more comfortable in that interview as they ask these questions too, because you're able to not just tie it to yourself, but being able to tie your skills into where they can use it in that organization.
Great.
I would say when you go into your interview, ask questions, because I think that oftentimes when we're looking for jobs, we want to make the best impression and we want them to be sold on us. But we want to make sure, like, when you're applying for a job, you have to be sold on the company as well. You want to make sure that the job that you're applying for, that you are going to be happy with, and it's a mission that you actually believe in. So when you go in for your interview, make sure you have a list of questions of things that concern you, or things that you want to address, or make sure like you're clear on, so that you know exactly what you are signing up for in case you do get that job.
Great advice.
And I would say, you know, with the professional development piece, you know, come in with your resume, come in with a cover letter, ask good questions, show up early, and show your personality, because if that position isn't the right one, however, there might be another position. You know, like we said, it's nonprofits, they're always looking to hire. So show your personality, because you might be a better fit for somewhere else. We have perfect examples that we've interviewed people and we were like, hey, actually, you might be better in another role.
That happened to me.
Yeah, did it really? It also, yeah, it happened to, and I didn't know it happened to you, but that is really funny. But see, exactly, and you're perfect at your role, and so show your personality and show kind of what you got. You know, don't be afraid to shine.
That's great. And I would add one specific resource for students. My favorite job search website for meaningful nonprofit jobs is Christine's List, and it's like $20 for 3 months, because it's like they upload stuff every day, and it's only in Texas. But it's really great. Like, go on there, look at some of the past job postings they have, because it just shows like all sorts of nonprofit jobs and government jobs and stuff. So, last question, fun questions. What is your favorite best kept secret spot in Houston?
Oh, dear.
Well, it's obviously food related, because like food is life.
Right.
So mine is Sushi Choo Choo. I love that place.
You like that?
I love that place.
I love that you love it.
You go there, it's like on a conveyor belt, so then you don't have to buy a full roll. Each little plate is color coded, so you know how much each plate is, and then you get like 3 or 4 pieces of that specific roll, so you can munch on a whole bunch of them. And then by the end of the day, if you especially go during lunch, I think one time we went and I think it was like $5 each, and then we were full. So
yeah, that's awesome.
Love that place.
And it's fun because it's like this little conveyor belt of sushi.
It's like, ooh, what do I
Very
want
true.
today? Yeah.
No, that's super true.
I have no idea.
Nothing.
I feel like mine's not like hidden spot though. It's.
What are you thinking?
I mean, it's the best like daily specials basically. But I love, for what you're getting, I love Down the Street bar in the Heights. I think it's a one-stop shop for. They have great flatbreads. They got great drink specials.
You can bring your dog.
You can bring your
just gonna say that,
dog.
bring your dog,
On days
yeah.
like this, it's an incredible patio. When
Yeah.
it's raining, they got enough indoor seating. But that's just my favorite place. So it's not hidden, but
No, that's good. That's good.
Mine's not hidden either. It's so my favorite yoga studio, Black Swan Yoga, does free yoga the first Sundays of every month at Raven Tower, and it's so fun. I love Raven Tower. It's right next to White Oak Music Hall, and so it's just like a fun thing to do with your friends on a Sunday morning.
So it's up like on top of the
It's
tower.
not on the top tower. It's on the whole bottom area.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
That's
It's
cool.
pretty neat, yeah.
Yeah. Well, thank y'all.
Yeah.
And thank you very much for your time today. I hope y'all enjoyed it, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.